Donohoe is with us, CEO of Level Agency. It's great to see you.
Good.
So as we get this kind of news right off the bat, when we think of USMCA and North American trade deal, what are your thoughts when it comes to all of that, the big picture on these things?
So I think with the news that we received on the job growth and potentially going into 2020, the settling of the trepidation in those markets, I do think we're going to take what has been the record in American history of 110 weeks of not a recession and maybe even see that elongate past what everyone thinks.
Right, absolutely. And what's your big picture going into 2020? Are you feeling optimistic or not really?
I mean, I think a lot of people are just waiting for this, not second, but the first shoe to drop. I mean, when you think about 110 weeks straight with not just the profitability of a lot of the stocks that we talk about, but the overall the job growth, I think on its surface, it's very positive. I think when you start looking at a few data points slightly below that, there are some conversations to be had for what's going to happen later in 2020, but first Q1, Q2, I don't see anything that's a big specter of doom.
So you're talking about certain names today, including Google. So let's just start with that.
Let's name some names.
Yeah, name some names.
Okay.
What's on your mind these days?
All right, so these are things that, I think investors, whether it's through the court of public opinion or just profitability and doing well, everyone's aware of these. I do have a different take than most people. So if you want to start with Google, we can start with Google.
All right, go for it, yeah.
So you've got the co-founders who have just officially given the CEO role from Sundal from the CEO of Google to the CEO of Alphabet, which is the mothership. But Google is the lifeblood. It's the profitability.
Right.
Most feel it's the worst job in America, that they still have, because of the differences in ownership, they still have the final say. Number one.
Right. They said that Sundar Pichai is like the head, but they still hold the keys to the house.
Which
was
is
the
true.
phrase.
Which is true. You have essentially the engineer, the operator, the genius, who has now been given verbally, and I would assume promised, control over the P&L, over the balance sheet. So what's going to happen is you've got Google's the mothership, and you've got all these ancillary pet projects. The pet projects that the co-founders, they love to death. But last quarter, those pet projects lost about $941 million. So almost $1 billion per quarter that it's losing. Now, again, to be clear, I love that these co-founders are almost what you'd want from a technology founder. They are doing things that might benefit society. I feel that even if he is able to diminish that loss by half, that's going to give Google stock, Alphabet stock, another 1.5, maybe 2 in terms of net profit. That's a big deal when you're doing $40 billion top line a quarter.
So this is your buy name,
This is my buy because I think people would see the situation is it's status quo. It's not going to change. I feel they wouldn't have given him this role if they're not going to listen, at least partially, to his likely suggestion to stop hemorrhaging almost $1 billion.
All right, so if that's your buy, and I don't want to get to your sell just yet because I have that. And what about you have a technology name that you're also watching?
So Slack is the collaborative work solution that is pretty popular. I think it's going to be one of the few, where there are about 200 ticker unicorns out there. There's a handful that are actually
the ticker symbol.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a few of the nearly 200 unicorns that are profitable.
Right.
They are about, they're going to lose about 40%. The net profit is going to be negative 40% this year. They are the closest, given their revenue growth, to possibly turning a profit in 2020. The reason, in my opinion, it's a hold, if you're not already in, I would definitely wait to see, is that even with a 60% year-over-year increase in revenue, you've got a giant, the worst competitor to have as your number 2. And that's Microsoft. And you do not want to have Microsoft as number 2.
It's impossible, right? It's hard to compete against them.
And because their competing product is almost as good, and it's free. And so Microsoft Teams, it's free, and 1 out of 5 professionals already uses MS Office.
Yeah, and they've also, for Teams, they've been touting how many subscribers they have and people using them. And
about 20 million, I think.
Right, yep. So that's a big deal. And then your sell is Peloton. I mean, there are some people who love Peloton. They love the bike. They love that it has the revenue stream of the services. They think it's an up-and-coming company. It's a newer company. You say no.
I mean, as a marketer, they obviously have a lot of slips and falls this year. But beyond that, they're losing 20%. They're negative net 20% profit margin. And they only have so much of a runway in 2020 to turn a profit. And when you see 44% of all jobs, and I know we just had an explosive jobs report, when nearly half of those jobs are what we'll call low income. So 44% of all jobs in America are around 18,000 median income. So there's not a ton of disposable income out there. When you see that growth, number one. Number two, the actual real wages actually are decelerating. So Peloton is a borderline luxury good. You're selling $2,000 cycling machines and $4,000 treadmills. You need disposable income from the upper middle class, and I would be concerned that that's not going to be there.
Right. Well, it depends, right? I see what you're saying. I mean, a lot of folks don't have the money and funds for these kinds of very expensive. I mean, $2,000 or $4,000 for a piece of equipment is a lot of money.
It is.
But it's not a lot of money for just like the fancy cars and the fancy bags and all the luxury goods that are sold hand over fist around the planet.
But their runway to get to profitability, I think they're going to need a little bit more of a runway than what I think the economy might give them.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see on that one. It's great to see you. It's great to see you. Thank you so much. When Thomas Donohoe's here, we're listening with a buy, sell, and a hold. Thanks for joining us, CEO of Level Agency.